Look at this bone. At first glance, an ordinary rib from a long extinct animal. But inside is another piece of bone. It struck with tremendous force, shattered into dozens of pieces, and stayed there for almost 14,000 years. The fragment remained inside the animal for 14 millennia. What is it? A fall? A wound from two giants fighting? Or the tip of a weapon a human threw into a living mastodon before the famous Clovis culture appeared? The question is whether this was damage or human weaponry. Strangest of all, the object inside the rib is mastodon bone too. One mastodon was attacked with a weapon carved from another. The weapon and the animal it struck were both mastodon. But when scientists first saw this find, many simply refused to believe it. Accepting it meant people had hunted enormous animals in the Pacific Northwest earlier than accepted history allowed. Accepting that would place hunting earlier than accepted history allowed. The dispute lasted over 40 years. The bone was X-rayed, tested for DNA, sliced into 2,000 microscopic images, and found to hold 24 fragments of an object that should not have survived. The tests revealed 2,000 slices and 24 embedded fragments. And only then would one detail emerge that completely changed the meaning of the discovery. The weapon really did strike a living mastodon, but it did not kill it. Who found the bone? Was it really a weapon? Why did scientists argue for decades? And what can one failed throw reveal about America's first people? These questions arise from one damaged rib and one failed throw. August 8, 1977, the Olympic Peninsula in the northwestern United States, near the small town of Sequim, Washington. This happened near Sequim on Washington's Olympic Peninsula. The landowner, Emmanuel Manis, known as Manny, operates an excavator in a dried peat bog. He wants to deepen the hollow and make a pond. No archaeologists, no expedition, no long-term plan. Just a man digging beside his home. Then the bucket lifts strange, massive objects from the dark soil. At first, they look like old logs. But wood should not be so smooth, heavy, and curved. The objects were too smooth, heavy, and curved to be wood. Manny stops. With his wife Claire, he clears the find and realizes they are enormous tusks. They belong not to a mammoth, but to an American mastodon, another giant proboscidean living in North America at the end of the Ice Age. It was another proboscidean from the end of the Ice Age. Already a sensational find, a man digging a pond had uncovered nearly an entire skeleton of an animal extinct for thousands of years. A pond project had uncovered nearly an entire ancient skeleton. But the real sensation was not in the tusks. Archaeologist Carl Gustafson of Washington State University arrives. From 1977 to 1979, his team excavates an adult male mastodon from an ancient pond bed. The team excavated the adult male from 1977 to 79. Notice, the bones do not lie like an intact skeleton. They are separated and displaced. Some have spiral fractures. Flakes seem deliberately removed from one large bone. Others show possible cut marks. The separated bones, fractures, flakes, and cuts suggested human activity. All of this suggests that people may have butchered the animal after it died. It suggests it, but it does not prove it. Bone can crack under soil pressure. Stones, roots, or predator teeth can leave marks. And when a find could move the peopling of a continent centuries backward, it looks like is not enough. For such a claim, resemblance by itself was not enough. And then the rib appears. A small, dense fragment protrudes from it. Gustafson calls it a broken bone point. An ancient hunter threw a spear, the point hit the rib, shattered, and stayed inside. The suspected weapon remained physically inside the injury itself. If he is right, this is not butchery of a dead animal. It is direct evidence of attack. The weapon remains in the wound. The evidence looked direct, but the rib's original position was lost. But there is a problem, a very serious one. The rib was not found undisturbed beside the skeleton. It came from soil lifted earlier by the excavator. Its exact original position was lost. The excavator had moved the soil before the rib was recognized. Critics could ask, how do we know it belonged to this mastodon and this period? Could a foreign splinter have entered later? Could it be the animal's own bone? Or a natural injury given a convenient meaning? That left natural explanations for how the damage formed. An ordinary farm became the center of one of America's longest archaeological disputes. To see why the date mattered, remember how scholars then pictured America's first people. For decades, Clovis culture symbolized the continent's earliest people. Its distinctive stone points occur across North America and date to about 13,000 years ago. The model treated Clovis makers as America's earliest population. The logic seems simple. These were the oldest, widely distributed, and easily recognized tools. So their makers must have been the first people to spread rapidly across the continent and hunt mammoths, mastodons, and other large animals. But the Manis Mastodon appeared to be older. Not 10 or 20 years older, which might be dismissed as measurement error, but roughly 900 years earlier than Clovis technology. The gap was 900 years, not a minor error. If the rib held a human weapon, the old model collapsed. People already lived in America before Clovis. They hunted multi-ton animals and used a technology that almost completely vanished. It meant pre-Clovis people hunted multi-ton animals with perishable technology. Why? Because stone can remain in the ground for tens of thousands of years. Wood, hide, sinew, and bone usually decay. Stone survives, while wood, hide, sinew, and bone usually decay. That creates an uncomfortable problem for archaeology. We often imagine ancient people through the things that survived best, not through everything they actually used. But in the late 70s, evidence was still lacking. For decades, the Manis rib hovered between sensation and error. So the rib remained suspended between sensation and possible error. Some called it an early weapon. Others said, prove its age, its link to the skeleton, and above all that humans shaped it. Age, association, and human shaping all still required proof. In 2011, Michael Waters' team at Texas A&M returned to the find. This time, scientists had tools unavailable to the original investigators: precise radiocarbon dating, computed tomography, and analysis of ancient DNA and protein. The team now had dating, CT, DNA, and protein analysis. They began with the main weakness: an excavator had moved the rib. Did its age match the tusks and other remains? Radiocarbon dates from purified bone collagen matched for the rib and both tusks. The entire animal dated to about 13,900 years ago. The matching dates linked the rib and both tusks. So the rib was not some younger bone that had accidentally entered an older layer. It truly belonged to this discovery. That showed the rib genuinely belonged to the Manis find. Next, the bone was sent for a computed tomography scan. The scan showed not sediment or a pebble, but dense bone shaped to a point. It had entered the rib about 2.15 centimeters and shattered on impact. It penetrated about 2.15 centimeters and shattered afterward. Now consider the force of that strike. To reach the rib, the weapon crossed the skin and 25 to 30 centimeters of back muscle before striking at roughly 45 degrees. The trajectory crossed skin, thick back muscle, and the rib. That does not look much like accidental contact with a splinter lying on the ground. But one even stranger question remained. What was the object itself made from? Scientists sampled both the rib and the fragment embedded inside. Genetic and protein analysis produced the same answer: mastodon. Both genetic and protein tests identified the material as mastodon. Yes, you heard that correctly.
A mastodon bone was lodged inside a mastodon rib. This does not mean the hunter broke a bone from the same animal and drove it back in. The object came from outside, probably made beforehand from another mastodon, killed earlier or found dead. The object came from outside, probably from another mastodon's remains. According to the 2011 study, the picture was becoming almost obvious. People before Clovis made bone projectile points, attached them to shafts, and hunted large animals. The study described pre-Clovis bone points mounted on hunting shafts. It seemed the dispute was over, but it was not. Critics said the scan showed bone fragments but not the whole object's shape. Without worked edges or a clear outline, could it truly be called a point? Fragments alone did not reveal a complete, clearly worked outline. The 2011 study also failed to detect convincing healing around the wound and suggested that the mastodon had died soon after the attack. The earlier study therefore assumed death followed soon after impact. So two major mysteries still remained. Was it really human-made? And what happened after it struck the animal? The answer would not arrive until 2023. Researchers scanned the rib again, this time at much higher resolution. They produced 2,067 micro-CT slices, spaced only 59 micrometers apart. That is thinner than a human hair. The slices were thinner than a human hair and closely spaced. They effectively excavated the bone again, not with a shovel, but inside a computer.
Foreign particles were marked by hand on every slice. The automatic software confused rib and object because both were mastodon bone, so researchers separated the two materials layer by layer. Researchers separated rib and point manually, one slice at a time. The work took more than 500 hours. They found 24 fragments. Each became a three-dimensional model, then an enlarged copy printed at 6:1 scale. Imagine a puzzle that exploded inside another bone almost 14,000 years ago. Its pieces have no clean factory edges, no picture on the box, and no guarantee that every fragment even survived. The pieces lacked clean edges, and some fragments may be missing. 18 fragments fit together, representing 99% of the material inside the rib. Here, the random splinter theory begins to collapse. Microscopic channels run through dense bone. Joined correctly, they continue across each fracture. The scientists were not matching similar pieces, they were reconstructing one object. Correct joins made microscopic channels continue across the broken surfaces. So what did the reconstruction reveal? A thin, broad, pointed form.
One surface was flatter, the other more convex. The sides met in sharp edges. Smooth areas and linear marks on the surface resembled traces of deliberate grinding. The reconstruction formed a thin, broad point with converging sharp edges. The surviving section is at least 3.5 centimeters long, 17 millimeters wide, and nearly 6 thick. The full point is unknown. Most broke off on impact and vanished. Only the broken front survived. Most of the weapon was gone. So archaeologists did not find a whole spear, only the shattered front of a bone point. But that section was enough to reveal the essential truth. No such shape occurs naturally in a mastodon skeleton. It could not break from a rib, vertebra, or other bone and form itself. It came from the dense wall of an adult mastodon's long bone, and its surfaces were worked. The long bone material and worked surfaces indicated deliberate manufacture. Someone obtained a large bone, split it, chose a blank, shaped and sharpened it, ground it smooth, then fixed the point to a spear or foreshaft. Someone split, shaped, sharpened, ground, and mounted the bone blank. But why make a weapon from bone when stone was available? Ancient technology was not about one perfect material. Stone makes a sharp edge, but good rock is not everywhere, and thin points can break. Large bone gives a long, tough blank that can be ground, repaired, and fitted to a shaft. Stone gave sharpness, large bone gave length, toughness, and repairability. The Manis point also differs from later cylindrical Clovis bone points. It is broad, plano-convex, and shaped more like a stone point. This was not an early version of familiar weaponry, but a separate tradition. Its broad, plano-convex design differed from later cylindrical Clovis points. Bone and ivory tools were known among ancient peoples of Siberia and Beringia. Perhaps the first groups entering America carried several ways of making weapons and then adapted them to local materials and local prey. Similar bone and ivory technologies were known in Siberia and Beringia. And then someone came close enough to a living mastodon to throw this weapon. What might the moment of attack have looked like? The hunter probably aimed between the ribs, toward the lungs, where a good hit could quickly weaken the huge animal. A hit between the ribs could have reached the lungs. But the point struck the rib itself. The point stayed intact through hide and muscle. On striking dense bone, its edges broke, the center punched into the rib, and the tip shattered. Some fragments remained in the wound, the rest left with the shaft. It stayed intact through tissue, then shattered against dense rib bone. And then the scientists noticed something the 2011 study had missed. Tissue around the fragments had changed. A hematoma formed after impact, then healing and early bone growth began. The surrounding tissue showed hematoma, healing, and early bone growth. That can happen only in a living organism. The mastodon did not die when it was struck. It walked away. The animal survived long enough for its body to stabilize the damage. Researchers say this early healing could have formed over several weeks. The animal survived long enough for healing to begin. Now the story is far more interesting than a successful hunt. This is probably the trace of a miss. The hunter aimed between the ribs but hit bone. The weapon shattered. The badly wounded mastodon still escaped. The point hit bone, shattered, and the wounded mastodon escaped. What happened afterward is something we may never know.
Perhaps it later died naturally and people butchered the carcass. Perhaps the same group caught it and finished the hunt. Some bones may show human processing, but the exact sequence is unknowable. Several later outcomes remain possible, but none can be reconstructed. That matters. A good story is not weakened by "we do not know." This is the boundary between science and attractive fiction. Saying "we do not know" separates evidence from invention. We know the object entered while the mastodon lived. We know it was mastodon bone from outside the animal. Its shape and surfaces match a human-made point. Its age is about 13,900 years. The secure facts are injury, material, workmanship, and age. But not the hunter's name, group size, shaft type, full weapon size, or exact cause of death. So why does this discovery change the history of America? First, it is one of the most direct pieces of evidence for hunting before Clovis. Not a stone meters from the bones. Not a disputed scratch. Not a hearth of similar age. Pieces of the weapon are physically embedded in a living wound on one animal. The weapon fragments remain physically inside a wound formed during life. Second, the discovery shows how incomplete the archaeological record can be. We look for stone points because stone survives. But the people at Manis may have favored bone. Had this weapon not lodged inside another bone, nothing of that technology might remain after thousands of years. Without becoming trapped in bone, such weaponry could disappear completely. The absence of familiar stone tools does not mean the absence of sophisticated technology. Third, the continent's earliest inhabitants were not a single uniform group using one toolkit. Before the nearly continent-wide Clovis standard appeared, different hunting methods and material traditions already existed.
Different methods and materials existed before Clovis became widespread. But we should not make the discovery prove things that it does not prove. The Manis rib does not tell us who reached America first. It does not show the exact migration route, prove humans killed every mastodon, or mean one point alone destroyed the Clovis model. This rib cannot answer every question about America's first people. Other pre-Clovis sites were known by then. Manis matters for a different reason. Here, an act from almost 14,000 years ago can be reconstructed from the direction of one strike. The strike direction preserves an action from nearly 14,000 years ago. Someone made a weapon from a large animal's bone and threw it at another mastodon. The point crossed muscle, hit a rib, and shattered. The animal escaped and began healing. The point crossed muscle, hit rib, shattered, and remained inside. The ancient hunter's failure became a victory for modern science. Had the point passed between the ribs, it would probably never have been found. Had it fallen out, the rib might have been destroyed. Had the excavator moved centimeters aside, the whole story could have remained buried in peat forever. A different strike or excavator path could have erased everything. But the fragments survived. First dismissed as doubtful, the fragments later yielded their age and origin. 12 years afterward, they were rebuilt piece by piece. The fragments were doubted, dated, identified, and finally reconstructed. Today, one damaged rib contains a vanished world, an ancient maker, a prepared weapon, a dangerous hunt, a violent strike, a surviving animal, and a scientific dispute lasting almost half a century. The rib preserves technology, hunting, survival, and decades of scientific dispute. Sometimes history is changed not by a great battle, a city, or a written document. Sometimes all it takes is one missed throw, trapped inside a bone for 13,900 years. One missed throw remained inside bone for 13,900 years.